Well, good evening. My name is Jim Kello. Welcome to New Tracks. This is where mentors help modelers build. If you're new to the show, please go to our website, newtracksmodeling.com, and subscribe, and you'll get an email that if you confirm back, then you're subscribed officially, and you'll get all of the future logins and so forth about our future shows for both Zoom and YouTube. We have some door prizes coming up. The first one that's coming up next is on the 25th of this month for that show. And Coastmans Scenic Products is the vendor that's donating the door prize. And then on August the 28th, Nick Santo of Decoder Buddies is donating that door prize. So those two are coming up, the next door prizes that we have. And if you're officially subscribed to our website, then you're eligible to enter the door prizes. So that's another reason for you to go to our website and make sure that you are officially subscribed. We need some help. We're having to terminate doing the breakups of our total show for YouTube because we just don't have anybody right now that's volunteered to help us do that. So I hate to do it, but unfortunately, we're going to have to stop doing that. And there's just nothing that we can do about it since we haven't been able to attract anybody that wants to give us a little time to help break up the total show into the various segments. So I'm sorry about that. And you'll be able to see the individual segments, but you'll have to find them within the total show. And you can pretty well gauge or at least have an estimate of when in the total show each one of the segments will be by looking at the agenda for that particular show. And the agenda, of course, is shown on our website, which is another reason why the website is becoming more important as we're having to cut back on some of the things that we've been doing in the past, simply because we just don't have the volunteer help to do it. So again, if you'd like to help us, we certainly need it. There's a lot of areas that we need help in, but if we can't get it, then our only option is to stop doing some of the things that we've been doing in the past. For example, on the 28th of August, that'll be the last show that we do on a Saturday night for a while, at least until we can get some more help. Why? We're going to continue the shows on Wednesday nights, but we're having to stop the shows on Saturday nights after the end of August, again, because we're just not getting the volunteers that want to spend a little time to help us produce the shows. So I'm sorry about that. We've been doing them now for going on 14, 15 months, but we're just not able to continue them twice a week because we're just not getting the volunteer help anymore. We have some great build-alongs coming up. Rick and Marie Hunter are doing one starting September the 1st. That'll run through October the 6th. And they're building a trestle, an 81-foot trestle. There'll be two versions of it that they're building. They've got a great price on it. And their information is posted on our website, photo of the trestle that they're building and so forth. And in addition to that, Al Collins is giving a discount of $20 off his Ultimation repeater combination sanding operation for people that want to build along with Rick and Marie. So they're going to start this on September 1st show and then continue it weekly until October the 6th. So anybody that's been interested in building a trestle and thinking about it, this is a real opportunity for you. Martin Breckville MMR is going to be building a Leadville Designs kit, maintenance away car. He starts on September the 22nd, and this will run for about 4 to 6 weeks, depending on how much time it takes Martin in the individual segments to actually build the kit. And you have to mention New Tracks when you order the kit. And if you do, then you get a 10% discount from the manufacturer, Leadville Designs. If you're not familiar with Let Build Designs, I encourage you to go to their website. When I first found out about the company and went to their website, I was really impressed with not only the models that I saw, but the philosophy of the owner of the company. And I encourage you to go and check out his philosophy toward selecting the kits that he offers and then providing the material to build them. Jim Murphy is starting a Wubbel kit on October the 13th, again for 4 to 6 weeks in building it. This is available in both HO and O scale. There's a 25% discount for Wubbel's kit. This is the second one that Wubbel has been involved with for our show. And I really appreciate Rick Steele's attention and interest in providing his kits and participating in this. This is going to be a business car. It's a little different kind of passenger car. Not all the railroads have it, but many did. And in addition to Jim Murphy, who's an excellent modeler, building it for you on the show, then you can also ask Jamie Bothwell about how to detail the underbody, because that's his specialty. And you've seen him talk about it on some of our previous shows. And it's obvious the knowledge that Jamie brings to passenger car underbody detail. Next, on October the 16th, for again 4 to 6 weeks, Bill Davis is going to be building a rail scale model of a tobacco barn. This is not your normal barn. It's a little different. And Stephen Milley has offered a 20% discount off the kit that's available in both N, HO, S, and O. But you have to use the coupon code NEWTRACKS. And this is one word, not two, one word for Stephen's model. And if you put in NEWTRACKS, the one word in the coupon code, then you'll get the 20% discount off of the scale kit that you're interested in building along with Bill Davis. And then on November the 6th, David Schultz will be building the all-nation waffle side boxcar kit. Now this is really going to be special because we have the new owner of All Nation here tonight. That's going to be talking with you a little bit later about where he's taking the company and what he's doing and how he got involved with bringing the company back to life and so forth. And this is going to be a build in O scale by David Schultz. David's going to be building, there are two versions of this kit. One of them is a more detailed version. And John talks about it being the high-end kit. It sells for $159.95 plus $12 shipping and handling. It's a more comprehensive kit with multiple roof profiles and inside interior walls with details. So this has got much more involved building than the basic kit, which is the other kit John is also offering for this build along. The more basic kit sells for $109.95 plus $12 and shipping and handling. But on the basic kit, John is able to offer us a 5% discount. Again, if you use the code NEWTRACKS when you order it from him. John is in the process of bringing back this company that's been out of model railroading for quite some time now. And it's a one-man show. He's doing all of it himself. He's not farming it out to other people and so forth. And he encourages you to order just as soon as you possibly can so that he can make sure you have the kit in time for the build along and he can get you exactly what you want in the kit. So again, he's on our website. And if you're not familiar with this kit, it's a different kind of boxcar and something unusual and unique. So I encourage you to look at it and participate with this build along with David Schultz. Then on a different subject, coming up August the 21st, which is right around the corner, with Jeremy Wyatt taking over for Chris Corse this summer, is our next My Build. Now, the show is about mentors helping modelers build. That's what I write about in my articles. That's what the Zoom meetings are about. That's what I'm trying to get across here. People aren't building like they used to. The people on this show, many of you are fantastic modelers. I know you are. I've seen some of your modeling. I know what you can do. Please show us your models. Please participate in the My Build. We are not getting people to build. In one of the last My Builds, we had 3 people. I showed a model simply because nobody else was. Clark Kooning showed a model, and Bob Farquhar showed a model. Now, guys, you've seen our models. Yeah, we can build, and I'm not embarrassed to show my models to anybody. You shouldn't be either. This is not a contest. This is trying to show people what's possible in model railroading, what you're able to build, how you do it, talk about it, and show what is able to be done by building models in model railroading. This is a participation show. We're supposedly helping people learn how to build. Please help us by showing your models. This is August the 21st. Send a picture of a model with a caption and your name to Jeremy White, and he'll put it in the program for you. If you want to be live and talk about your model, that's fine. We encourage that. If you don't or can't be here that night, then Jeremy will show your model and describe it with the caption that you give it. So we encourage you to participate, because that's part of helping other people and giving other people the motivation to try to build models. Now I'd like to turn for the first session for tonight, and that's our quick tip with Ted Becker. Ted, welcome. Thank you so much.
Well, good evening.
Can't hear you, Ted.
You can't hear me.
Barely.
Now.
Barely.
Barely.
Now that's better.
Okay. Let me share my desktop. Tip for tonight is this little spray bottle, which is sold by Dollar Tree for cleaning your glasses. But I find that these put out a very fine mist, and they don't dribble. So to me, it looks like they would be excellent for spraying wet water when you're doing ballasting or scenery. The liquid that comes in them is soapy water that doesn't seem to be any ammonia or alcohol in it. The liquid that comes in it may be okay for spraying as wet water, but the real tip is the spray bottles do a really nice fine mist spray. And that's my tip for tonight.
What do they call it, Ted? What's the name on it? I can't read it.
Lens cleaner spray.
Lead cleaner spray.
Lens cleaner spray. And they're
Well,
hanging on a hook at the end of the aisle.
Gotcha. Thanks so very much. That's a great idea.
Okay, that's it.
Okay. Well, next let's turn to David Rarig. David is building a model for us that Paul Egri designed. It's in card. It's on our website. You can download it if you want to build along with David on this. And I think you're going to really be interested in how this kit comes out and how David is able to take a card model and really turn it into something that is useful on your model railroad. So David, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. You might notice I've got an assistant here tonight. She's helping me to watch. She has to be right in the middle of everything. So she's laying on my computer desk and taking in all you guys, watching all the movement on the screen. So Ken, are you ready? You can roll at part 4. Well, welcome back. We're starting the 4th how-to session on my build along of the Egri engine house. I jumped ahead a little bit and already constructed the back wall, and I wanted to point out a couple things that we're going to have to address as we build the rest of them. Here you can see this is the wall that I haven't glued together, and I already layered it. I'm not sure you can see it, but the pilasters are standing proud, and this piece here is also layered over top. One thing I did want to point out that you need to guard against, my building plate here is actually a self-healing pad, and I had inadvertently allowed some glue to collect on it. I think it was the glue stick, and it actually left very slight marks on this blue siding. As I had weighted it down, I suspect it picked up some glue from someplace on there. I generally prefer to build on a glass plate, which is actually underneath this cutting pad. The problem with the glass plate is it's really hard to make videos with this background, because this white underneath the glass is my work bench, and this white, and it makes it hard to see. So I use this X-Acto self-healing mat to do all the cutout work. It's important so you don't damage your blades when you cut through. So anyway, just be careful of that. Now, something else I wanted to point out. I'm not sure you can tell it, but there's a definite bow. It's like top to bottom on this piece. So I'm going to have to put something on the back, on the inside, to straighten that. I might use some, like 1/4-inch balsa, maybe square, or some basswood, or just something to prevent that from bowing. Could cut internal formers, walls, if you will. Of course, if you want to have the building open so that you can actually run an engine in there, that would present a problem. I am not actually going to build this with the doorways open. Okay, I'm going to glue the doors in place solidly, so there won't be any way to actually run locomotives in and out. But that's my choice. You don't have to do it that way. If you want to leave the doorways open, you're going to have to do a lot of bracing on the inside to keep this from flopping around. I would suggest probably use square basswood strips in the corners, vertical strips, maybe a couple horizontal ones as well, because otherwise it's going to, your building is going to be crooked all over the place. Okay, I've gone ahead and I've cut out the remaining pieces from our overlays. Here you can see the remaining sidewall piece. Notice that I have already colored the cut edges here with a gray marker. If you're working on this yourself, you want to do that. And I'll also cut out the end wall overlays. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to glue these pieces of cardstock for the metal siding. You're just going to glue them over top of the other overlays. Again, I still like using the stick glue. I find it to be very convenient. But you do have to be a little careful that you don't get smears all over everything, because that can make it look nasty on your side. But I'm going to put this on. on the thinner piece because this is cut out to the right size. Again, I've got a piece of scrap card behind it. Hopefully to keep that glue from getting all over my cutting mat. Okay. Now, this piece will be glued over top of the other overlay. Again, line it up carefully. Hopefully get it right the first time. Although with the stick glue you can reposition it slightly if it's not exactly lined up. It's not the easiest thing to do, but it can be done. And then my roller that I use is a wallpaper seam roller. Buy it at Home Depot or hardware store or something like that. And use a fair amount of pressure to roll that down in place. I also, by the way, edged that piece around with the gray marker as well. If perhaps when you do this and the stick glue doesn't get evenly applied, you may have a separation. If that happens, I just use a bit of my PVA tacky glue and feed it underneath there and stick them back together. I still find it easier to use the stick glue, because with white glue or PVA glue you're going to have to apply it to the piece and then spread it out nice and even, which when using stick glue it already does that. Plus with your white glue you'll tend to get more puckering or bowing, warping if you will, of the side. There's a little bit of extra glue right there. I can just take it off with my fingers, but I got to be careful now because it's real easy to transfer that to what you're working on. Whoops, wrong side. This one goes on this one. Again, carefully line it up. Line up your door openings and your edges. And then roll it down. Okay. And we have one more to do. This is the back wall, or the front wall, if you want to call it that. Here again, just use this is probably how I got the glue on it. See, there's still glue on this piece of scrap. And I laid that piece of siding down on there and it picked up that glue. It doesn't take much. I think I'll have a paper towel here. I can wipe most of it off. Or I could just use another piece of card. One that isn't all smeared up with glue. Because I like this, the old saying is, do as I say, not as I do. I think probably applies here. Try to get the ends as even there as you can. And then roll it down good and solid. Okay. Now we're going to put these layering pieces over top of our cutout walls, just like so. Okay, and here I'm going to use, well, I probably use a stick glue again. I could use a other type of glue, like a PVA or tacky glue, but I'll probably just use a stick glue again. Well, welcome back. You can look at this and say, wow, what happened? Well, I jumped ahead a little bit. Got ahead of myself. The back sidewall and the front sidewalls, I glued in place to the end walls on the glue tabs using tacky glue. And then I thought, well, I might just as well continue on with this. So I cut some reinforcing pieces. You can see them here on the end walls. This is some heavy chipboard, cardstock, if you will. I call it chipboard. This stuff is, I don't know how many ply it would be called, but it's 2 millimeters thick. You can actually almost see that there's a line where it's 2 layers glued together, and I bought it that way. And I used this to make a brace for inside the end walls. Remember I said when we cut out the openings it was going to be really flimsy, and I also wanted something to make the walls thicker so it had a little more appearance. When we put the doors in behind here, so there would be a little bit of an offset. Kind of hard to see this, but it was going to be in like about that far. If you notice, there is a shadow or a shading already on the drawing here, which to me says this is set back in pretty far into the wall. So that's why I wanted to make it thicker. Not only that, it strengthens this considerably. I'm going to have to do the same thing on the side walls. This board that I have, I bought, I think it was 9 by 12 inches, and it's just it'd be like a backer board that you'd see on a pad of drawing paper or watercolor paper or something like that. They normally use a real heavy cardboard like this. So if you don't want to order it, I think I bought this on Amazon. But if you don't want to order any card like this, you might be able to salvage it, scrounge it from something else. You could just use a cereal box card, but this is about 3 times as thick. This actually measures 2 millimeters. It's like 74, 75 thousandths, I think, thick. This is what I use my calipers for most of the time, is just to check the thickness. There, maybe you can see that. It's like about 74 thousandths of an inch thick. Now, if you don't want to use card, you could use 16th inch sheet balsa wood or basswood or plywood if you feel like cutting out these openings in plywood. It'd be pretty hard to do, but certainly would be doable. But you really need something here to reinforce these ends. I'm going to do the same thing on the sidewalls. The way I do this is to just measure the required length. Keep in mind that you're going to have it's going to sit inside of these now, inside of your end walls. So you take your scale rule or just a regular 12-inch rule and measure that distance between those walls. And on my HO gauge it says it's 63 feet and 3 inches. I'm just going to make it 63 feet. That'll give me a little bit of wiggle room. Okay. And the height, you don't want to go up above the glue tabs because then that makes it harder to put it together. The height I get here is 23 feet 3 inches. So I'm just going to make it 23 feet by 63 feet. Okay? And we're just going to take this piece of card that I have here and measure out a piece that's 23 feet by 63 feet. And mark that. Number measured by 63. And I'm going to just take a square, a small machinist square I use here. So we get a square cut. Okay, 23 feet high would be right there. My mark. It doesn't really matter a whole lot because these pieces won't be seen anyway on the inside. Now if you want to have the doors open, you're going to be able to see inside with a completed structure. So what you might want to do is, in cutting these out, oops, see how I drifted off the line there, that's not good. I have to pull that blade right up against that straight edge. I just cut a white line at first, just a shallow cut to guide the blade, and it's already getting dull. I can feel it. It's not cutting smoothly. It's kind of grabbing. That is one thing that cardstock, and especially this kind of card, this heavy chipboard card, boy, it just dulls your knife blades really, really fast. So I just take pliers, snap that off, and we get a new sharp point. As I said before, these replacement blades for this knife come in packs, and there are 13 of those snap-off sections in each blade. So I get a lot more cuts with this than I would with a number 11 X-Acto. So it takes quite a few passes to cut through this heavy card. But it is possible. You'll know when you're all the way through. It just separates like that. Okay. Now, how am I going to glue this in and get it to sit nice and tight on here? Well, first of all, you got to test fit it and make sure that it fits in there where you want it, like there. Okay. A little bit of wiggle room. That's not a problem. Now, like I mentioned, since this is going to be visible, if you don't put the doors in place, even when there's a roof over top of it, you'd be able to look right in and see right in there.